Welcome to another edition of the Chicks on the Right Show. We are talking to our friend and sponsor of the show, Zach Abraham from Bulwark Capital Management. Zach, there was an article in Money Talks News, which is, I'm sure, a publication that you read every single day. And it was about the 8 expenses that retirees regret not cutting sooner. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about those 8 expenses because I myself am spending money on all of these things.
Of course.
And so I'm freaking out now, totally freaking out. Because, there's a lot. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably even more on the list because you've been doing this for a while. You have been advising people on all things financial. I'm going to give you some of the examples and then we can talk a little bit more about it. But like phone bills, telecom bills is one of them. Eating in nice restaurants or even not nice restaurants, just eating out, and bougie groceries. I mean, like, let's face it, you don't really need those tiny mini Reese's peanut butter cups from that bougie grocer. I mean, they're really good, but you know what I mean. Debt in general was number 3. Transportation was number 4. New cars, insurance. People like new cars, you know?
Yeah.
They don't like used cars. Clothing. The average American household spends more than $2,000 a year on apparel and services like dry cleaning, which is kind of, that's, you know, reading materials. I thought this was interesting, especially older people. They still like to read, whereas these young whippersnappers like things in small little bits, you know, but they have subscriptions to things that are, you know, outdated. Then there's a couple more. One of them, which I think is very interesting, is contributions to traditional retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the whole bucket of other stuff, which was the number 8, which was like, you know, cleaning services, home renovations, stuff like collections, lawn services, crap like that, prescription pet food, like, you know what I mean? Stuff you don't need. So like, what would you say is the first thing that should be cut? If somebody came to you and said, I want to retire in like 5 to 7 years,
mm-hmm.
What do you see in your practice?
So first of all, as it relates to retirement, everybody is different. And truthfully, as long as you've got a income plan laid out to some degree and you stick inside the confines of that income plan, meaning let's determine that for whatever deal you're retiring right now, and you're a client of ours, right? So we'll have this conversation at some point.
Yep, we will. Mm-hmm.
And we're like, okay, so what are our needs? What is that monthly income? And let's say we decide with the different things going on that you and your husband need to pull, and I'm just throwing a number out. Let's say it's $60,000 a year out of your retirement assets, and that's going to be the amount of money that we've got going forward, and that's going to be our budget. So $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month income. Okay. And we plan for that. As long as you stay inside that budget, as your advisor, I don't really care what you spend it on, right? As long as, because my whole thing is, what is your total spend as a percentage of your overall asset base, right? And we want to keep that number between 4 to 5%. Preferably. Okay. Now, different conversation is like you said, I've got 5 to 7 years. I want to sock away a lot of extra. I want to keep things as lean as possible. So I would prioritize it this way, and I do that with clients. A, get rid of as much debt as you possibly can.
That's number 1. Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, and we'll get to other things like phones, but you're going to always need a phone. So there's going to be a built-in cost to that, right? Another thing that we talk to clients about, okay, especially today, that may or may not mean aggressively trying to pay down your mortgage, right? So again, mortgage is a debt, okay, but it's a different kind of.
Are cars a debt? Do you consider cars a debt?
Yes,
that was like the whole other thing on this list. I thought it was so interesting that debt was one thing, but then, you know, like cars were a whole different thing. And I thought cars are a debt. Cars, a house. I mean, those are all, to me, that's debt. So
yes. Now a house, again, okay, so we got to treat a house a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Because a house is an appreciating asset over a long period of time, and we have to live somewhere. And so housing should be looked at really in its own category. Okay.
Yeah.
But what I would say though, and this is why, and look, I'm not saying this to drive business to us, but it's just factually true. This is really why you need to start working with an advisor or a planner on some level prior to retiring. Right? Because it's the last 10 years leading into retirement, quite honestly, are more important than the beginning of retirement financially, right? Making sure that we're in the right position.
Right.
So like I said, it's prioritizing it. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at clients and been like, no, stop. Do not pay your mortgage off. Zach, why wouldn't we want to pay our mortgage off? Because you've got 10 years left on your mortgage, right? And they go, yes. And I go, okay, well, we can go buy a 10-year treasury paying twice the amount of interest per year that your mortgage costs you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that money you were going to use to pay off your house, okay? And we're going to let that excess interest pay off your mortgage for you. And that way you maintain both assets. You've got the house and you've got the cash, right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't pay off your house. I'm saying you should talk to somebody like us to see if that's a good idea, right?
Yeah.
So
on that vein, I hate to interrupt you, but on that vein, like, do you recommend that people, or do you find it, I feel like this is probably common sense. You're probably I think I probably know the answer, but would you rather have a client who is, 55 and getting ready to retire in 10 years? Or would you rather have a client that's 35 and has like their whole adult life ahead of them? Because I have kids who are 30 and 35 and I'm like, you got to go talk to Zach. And then like that, I think, my God, they will be able to retire in like 20 years, like less than 20 years. Cause with all the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's better? Obviously it's better for them to come to you early, right? Or have a financial advisor early.
Yeah, for them. I mean, now for me, if you give me that question, I'm going to take the 55-year-old person every single time or older.
Really?
Why is that? They have more money.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's a great. Okay. Yeah.
So I get it, and I get it. The other thing, truthfully, outside of just financial, is that, look, if you're 30 to 35 years old, having an awesome retirement is a choice. It doesn't take any. And because of that, it's weird because it seems like I'm selling our own services down the road. I'm not. But what I'm saying is we can deliver substantially more value to somebody that already has saved a significant amount of money and somebody that is time constrained, right? So like a 55 to 60-year-old person, the clock is ticking. They're going to retire at some point in the next 10, 12 years, right?
Without question. Yeah.
Right. And so risk management at that point becomes much more important, right? Diversification, laying things out, planning that income strategy. Where when I look at a young person, do I think that they would do better with us over the next 20 or 30 years? Sure. But do I think it's going to be life-changing? No. And I tell all these young people, I go, look, if you want an unbelievable retirement, do one thing and one thing alone. Max out your retirement plan every single year.
Yep.
And anytime the market drops more than 20%, throw more money at it. Period. End of story.
That is great advice.
And they're like, well, I don't want to lose. I go, you're not going to lose. This is all money that's stuck in a retirement account anyway, right? Like it eventually will come back. And they're like, you're saying the market's going to always go up. And I go, yes, if for no other reason, just for inflation over time. Right. And the people are like, well, if you think that's your take, why do you think you need to manage risk? And I'm like, well, because guys, there are multiple times in the history of our country where stock markets have been negative for over 25 years.
Yeah.
So eventually is on the side of a 35-year-old.
A 35-year-old can do that. Yeah, they can totally do that.
Well, and here's the thing. They can actually make really good progress too. So for instance, from the years of 2000 to 2013, the stock market was flat. Okay, it didn't go anywhere for 13 years. Okay, yet at the same time, I've got several clients who saw substantial gains in their 401k. Why? Well, because during the down times, they kept contributing into their 401k. So when the markets got back up to their highs, their account balance was significantly greater, right? And so you can even make significant progress in a flat market. Well, if you're pulling money out of your account every single month, it doesn't work the same way, right? A flat market for 13 years will kill you. Right? Because you're pulling money out, you're not putting any back in.
Right.
So getting back to what we look at. So I would say, look, the number one most onerous and odious type of debt is credit cards. Okay.
Yeah.
So get rid of that credit card expense.
And then cars.
Yep. Cars. And that's,
Cars.
hey, and, you know, be smart about cars. I tell this to, you know, I tell this to as many people as will listen. Every time you see a car, just see a money incinerating pit.
It's
right?
oh my God, you just literally just set it on fire. You set your money on fire when you buy a car.
It is. It is so shocking to me when you see people that make good money too. And I'm not saying this isn't, you know, this is a good income, but even if you go to people that are making, let's say in the range of $250,000 to $400,000 a year, the average car loan right now is over $1,000.
Oh my God.
In the United States.
I can't like that.
Okay.
I
think it's average new car loan or something like that. But
I'm old enough where it pains me because I live in a world where I'm like, I only want my car payment to be like $300 a month.
Yeah.
I'm that person, you know what I mean? Because I was raised in the 80s and I either don't want a car payment, or if I have a car payment, I don't want it to be more than like $300. I'm so cheap when it comes to that. I cannot even imagine to wrap my brain around $1,000 a month of a car payment, which I guess
and here's the crazy part. Okay, let's say you've got and this is well within normal. Let's say you have two people, you got a household making $400,000 a year, right? Great level of income.
Totally.
Okay, and let's say you've got $2,300 a year in car payments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, $2,300 a year. You're looking at 24. Let's call that, you know, $28,000 a year. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're $400,000. Right. Let's carve off 30% right off the top. So you're $400,000. You're at like 250. Right. So let's call that 250, 260 take home pay.
Because of taxes. Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because of taxes. So 10% of your take home pay, 10%, you're making $400,000 a year. 10% is going to a depreciating asset that has absolutely zero chance to deliver you a positive net return.
Yeah.
Right. And so quote unquote, can you afford that payment? Well, yes, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Right. If you have a car payment, it should be a rounding error on your annual income, a rounding error. And by that, I'm talking like less than 5% of your take home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
If it's not, don't buy that car. If it's not, save up for an extra year, right? Or buy a lesser car. It is like it just kills me because you sit there and you watch it and you go, look, if you made a different decision today, I guarantee you your outcome will be better down the road.
Yes.
And yet we still do it. I mean, like, think how crazy that is. Even if you're making $400,000 a year, to be driving a $120,000 car.
Oh my God.
Nuts.
And I see people do it all the time.
I know.
I see people around me do it all the time. And it's like, what are you
norm.
doing?
It's the norm.
But again, I still go back to the whole, I guess maybe it's an age thing, because I'm like, I remember when you could buy a condo for $120,000. So I'm like, I can't do it. I can't.
I know.
It's crazy. It's all crazy. So listen,
on the phone thing too, there's another one right there where I sit there and go, look at the phone plans. There's all these other phone plans out there right now.
And they're competing. They're all competing with one another. I'm dealing with that with my mom, who is, I guess, considered elderly. She would really get mad if I called her that. But we do that with our mothers. My husband and I try to get them better plans because there's no reason that one individual should be spending $150 a month on a phone. So it's there's just no reason, because there's a lot of people, a lot of companies competing with one another to get your business. Do your research, because you can probably get a phone for like $50 a month, honestly, or less, even in some cases.
One other quick one to look, if you can afford it and it works, long-term care insurance, right? Long-term care. Everybody's freaked out about long-term care costs. Yes. Okay. If it works, it can be a wonderful thing. Okay. The problem is if you are considering that, again, I'm not saying this to drive people to us, but you need to speak to somebody, because long-term care insurance that you could buy 15, 20 years ago, it was incredible. Okay. But it was so good that it actually drove several of the companies issuing it out of business. Okay?
Really?
Since then, because people are living so much longer, since then, basically a lot of these quote unquote long-term care insurance plans that you see, effectively what they are is they're prepaid long-term care. So meaning if I've got to put in, and this is common, if I have to put in $200,000 to $250,000 into a long-term care policy, okay, and that gives me $1 million of coverage. Okay, when you start doing some math over a 15 or 20 year period of time, what you start seeing is that what you're doing is you're prepaying the insurance costs. It's not really giving you a big insurance. You know what I'm saying?
So there's another place that people need to be.
It'd be sort of like paying the equivalent of $500,000 for $1 million life insurance policy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's such that's a great analogy. Yeah.
If something happens to you, it's going to work out, but chances are it's not going to.
Right.
And you'd be better off. Because remember, 7% returns on your money, double your money every 10 years, right? So if I'm buying a long-term care policy, let's say at the age of 55, and I'm putting up $200,000 in that policy, well, if I just get a 7% rate of return, that $200,000 is going to be $400,000 by the time I'm 65. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then it's going to be $800,000 by the time I'm 75. Well, most cases you're not going to run into long-term care needs typically before 73, 74. So, then you're looking at it and going, okay, I've got $800,000 of cash sitting here versus $1 million in a long-term care policy.
Right.
But the cash I can use for anything. The long-term care policy has if I pull money out of it, it affects the coverage. It does all these things. So again, it's cutting back on expenses, but also making sure that we're positioning our money to where it's giving us, for lack of a better term, the biggest bang for our buck. And
this is the good stuff. I love this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I nerd out over this stuff. I totally geek out over because listen, I was telling our producer, Corinne, before we got on, that I am the person who buys all the Starbucks mugs from every single state and Starbucks. Yeah, and I'm that crazy old lady that I need to stop spending money on that stupid crap, right? So I'm guilty of it too. We're all guilty of places where we could save money in certain places, and people need to come talk to you. I know you're saying, I'm not trying to sell this or anything, but you are the person to talk to, Zach. You are the guy to talk to you about money. If people need to get their crap together, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So easiest way is go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com or knowyourriskpodcast.com. But yeah, bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com. Give us a call. We've got our road shows that we do every 6 weeks. We've got one coming up where we kind of run through how we do, who we are, how we do what we do. And, so you go to one of those and it's free, no obligation. And you'll leave with a really good understanding of who we are and how we do what we do. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. Yeah.
Good stuff. You guys check them out. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks as always.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.